Hey everybody, it's Anita here, and this is day 3 of the Messy Middle, one mom's journey to building a profitable business. So this morning I was walking and I was thinking about how um, I have been talking to a friend of mine and just walking through some things with her, and I was thinking about how at times where I felt like God had called me to do something first. And so that's kind of the basis of this day's recording in the Messy Middle, is that when we're called to do something first, sometimes our response can be, why me? Like for instance, if I'm called to start a business and like blaze a trail in an area that is where I don't have a proven path of steps to be able to follow, I can ask questions like, why me? I can sit around and when it gets hard, um, I can gripe about it. I can feel overwhelmed by it. I can complain about it. But what do we do in those situations, or maybe in my marriage and my relationships? Maybe I feel like God's calling me to um, just shift my attitude, shift the way that I think about somebody who's close to me. So, what do we do in those kinds of situations where we feel like we're called to be the first? Because sometimes, as trailblazers, don't we know, as women who are interested in doing something different, making an impact in a way that only we know that we can make. Sometimes, man, it's hard. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes I sit and I just cry out. I'm just being real. Like I cry out and like, God, why don't you call somebody else? Why don't you call, I don't know, why don't you call my business partner first? Why don't you call my husband first? Why don't you call my friends first or something like that? But then actually what I realized this morning, this was really the big takeaway, is that actually I love being first. I love being the trailblazer. I love being the one who actually is able to figure stuff out and blaze the trail and create a path that others can follow, because that's how God has made me. He's made me as a woman, and as an entrepreneur and as a successful business person and as a believer. He's made me to be a trailblazer in a way that probably looks different than some of my girlfriends. And so, one of the things that I want you to take away from that is that there are areas in your life where you're called to be first. Number one, here's some practical things that I want you to be able to do. Number one, I want you to consider what's your mindset? Where's your mindset at? When I switch from why me, and really kind of that, maybe that complaining mindset that says like, oh God, I can't do this. It's too hard. When I switch from that and instead I'm able to move in the direction where I can consider, like, okay, what can I do? What is possible? God, how are you leading me? Because I know how to listen to God. I know how to follow His steps. My heart does desire to be obedient to Him. And so in that, the first step is really figuring out, like, where's my mindset? Because don't we know everything starts with mindset? Like 90%, something like this, statistics I've heard are either 80 or 90% of everything that you do in life that's going to be successful is going to start with about 80 to 90% of your mindset. So step number one is I need to figure out what my thinking is telling me. Sometimes that's kind of hard. Sometimes the way that I do that is I talk to a friend. Sometimes the way that I do that is I pray. Sometimes the way that I do that is I go for a walk. Um, so the other things that I like to do in figuring out like the next steps, because really once I ask the question, why me, and I figure out that I know why me, it's because this is what God's called me to, then it gets down to like what I love to call the practical and the tactical of figuring out, okay, now what do I do? What are the steps now? So then I am able to actually see the path forward. And in the path forward, especially when you're in the messy middle, um, the best way I know how to do that, and this is like practical step number 2, is just take one step. I'm not always going to necessarily get the whole path laid out in front of me. I think we always like that, especially for those of us that are part of like a believing faith, a Christian, going through a Christian walk. So I know that we want the path, but don't we know that the God actually, he never really models that for us. What he models for us is obedience, and then in the obedience, I'll just give you like step by step by step instructions. So that's where the trust comes in. And as I trust God to lead me in the steps of my business or my life, or making those shifts where he's called me to do that first, then that's where actually I can move out of overwhelm and move into feeling like I'm being successful and moving forward in any way that God's called me. So remember, this definition of success can be just that progressive realization of moving forward in a worthwhile goal. So the third part of that is once you have your mindset moving in the right direction, and that's a practice. That's why it's called a discipline every day. Once I have my mindset walking, this is just the steps that I notice that I walk through. Then I get the step, just one step at a time. And in my one step, I can just figure out, like, I might make a mistake. I might do something fabulous. But either way, in the steps, what I can do is just take one step forward over and over and over again. Then the third element in that is really kind of a tenacity that causes me to keep going even when it gets hard. And so maybe it looks like I tried 10 steps, or I tried to build a business that took not 6 months, to get to my revenue number, but 18 months or 2 years or 5 years or whatever that looks like, but not giving up no matter what. See, I can set goals for myself, and those are amazing. They actually help me in so many ways to be able to go after the things that I want and the vision that God's given me, to reach the audience and to serve and do all those things that I love to do. But the thing is, like, maybe my timing is not the same. My timing might be off. And so in that, one of the things that we need to be able to lean into, and sometimes I think we're not very good as Americans in this, is the tenacity to not give up, to keep going when it gets hard, to when I'm called first and I know that I am, then I actually keep going and going and going, even when I make mistakes, even when I feel overwhelmed, even when I don't know what to do, even when I feel like I'm going it alone. Because don't we know, those of us that are called to be these trailblazers and really like these dream launchers for ourselves and for other people, and to be able to create really a movement, because that's what we want to do. I don't want to just create a business that just has more money. If I'm really being honest, and the longer I walk on the journey of being an entrepreneur, more money just really isn't the thing. That's not the worthwhile goal. There's so much more than that. That'll have to be maybe a post for tomorrow. But the thing is, like, once I determine ahead of time that I'm gonna go and do the thing, so I set the goal. And that can be like based on time or revenue that I want in my business, or number of clients, or any of those worthwhile things. They're amazing. But when the timeline doesn't work out the way that I expect, not in a way that is saying that I just didn't do the work, I'm not a fan of that at all. But really, like, I genuinely gave it the effort, but it didn't work out on the time frame. And so then I commit to be able to say that no matter what, I'm going to have the tenacity to keep going even when it's hard. The last little bit, and this is kind of like a bonus, because I already mapped out the 3 things, looking at my mindset, taking one step forward on the path, and then being tenacious in going after the things that God's put on my heart, and to be able to create a movement. The last thing that I want to talk about, and this is kind of like the bonus, is sometimes it strikes me a little bit funny that when I say why me, because I'm like being the trailblazer, then I actually think back to those prayers that I had that said, God, use me. God, I'm surrendered to you. Do whatever you want. Use me in any way that you see fit. Wreck me. Break down my own ideas, my own will, and show me your will. When I think, and so many others, when I think back to some of those prayers that I have personally prayed that said, God, choose me, pick me, I want to be a part of the movement that you have on this earth to be able to help others, to know so my sweet spot is helping other women of faith that have been in the corporate arena take their specialized knowledge and turn that into consulting business. And in that, as I raise my hand and I say, yes, Lord, I want to be able to follow you and do that and create a movement around helping other Christian working moms that came from the corporate space build a consulting business. I think back and I kind of chuckle because then I can actually say to myself, well, like, of course, God's saying, hey, go first. Hey, of course, God's saying, be a trailblazer. And so then my why me also turns into like, oh, actually, I said yes already. And now you're just going like a good dad does, right? Now you're actually just walking me through the process that it takes to be able to walk those steps out. So I think we desire to have the immediacy of life and our goals and the things that we pray about to happen immediately. And sometimes God's like, oh, little buddy, you're so sweet that you think that. But it's going to be a journey. And so that's why I'm here today, to be able to document the messy middle. I'm here with my dog, Scarlett. To be able to document for you and just hope to encourage you and yeah, just so you can see what it looks like from my perspective to be able to build a profitable business and help others and really create a movement that glorifies God and expands my own life to be able by helping others. So bless you, ladies. Hope you find just encouragement in this and take those 3 steps and make sure and take action on them. That's what this is all about.